Jcu インサイトのお時間です。相場議長はトランプ政権下でアメリカ国内の情報機関を統括する国家情報長官代理を務めたリチャード・グレネル氏にインタビューを行いました。グレネル氏はトランプ政権での入閣以前、在ドイツ米国大使を務めており、外交とインテリジェンスの双方に長けたエキスパートの一人です。外交の最前線にいたからこそ語れるアメリカファーストの意義とは何か、また外交インテリジェンスの立場から見た中国の恐ろしさとは。テキサス州ダラスで行われたインタビューの様子をご覧ください。
はい、皆様こんにちは。 Cpac テキサスの現場からJcu Insightの第1回目の収録をいたします。今日初めのゲストはですね、トランプ政権の時の国家情報長官代行のリチャード・グレネルさんにこれからお話を伺います。こんにちは。Thank you。じゃあ、リチャード・グレネルさん、あなたにはまず最初にお礼を言わなければいけません。2019年の、Thank you。2019年の Cpac であなたは体調が非常に悪い中、わざわざ日本の僕たちのために動画を送ってくれました。まずそのことをお礼を言わせてください。
I was so disappointed to not come to Tokyo and to not be with you in person. But I couldn't miss the opportunity to at least send a video of welcome. But I'm feeling much better.
ですよね。はい。今年も Cpac やるのでまたお声掛けしますから、チャンスがあればぜひ来ていただきたいです。
So this year we are going to hold another Japanese Cpac.
Yes.
When you are available, please.
I would love to be there. I would love to be there.
Thank you. じゃあ最初の質問します。
So first question.
あなたはブッシュ政権の時、国務省の国連スポークスマンとして活躍されました。そしてさらにトランプ政権ではドイツ大使も務められました。そうした非常に外交に詳しい立場から今のバイデン政権の外交政策についてどのように考えておられるか、問題点を挙げるとしたらどんなところがあるか、それをぜひ教えてください。
So we know that you are a spokesman to UN under the George W. Bush administration, and also you are the ambassador to Germany under the Trump administration. So you are an expert of foreign affairs. So now you see the Biden administration's foreign policy. What is the biggest issue of what concerning you the most?
So we have this concept called America First. And I would argue that Japan has a policy of Japan First. And where I served in Germany, they have a Germany First policy. But somehow Americans are the only ones who get in trouble for somehow pushing our America First agenda. And America First does not mean America alone. What we really mean is that if the American taxpayers are funding, say, ambassadors, we should be pushing American policy. I'll give you an example. When I was U.S. ambassador to Germany, the Germans have been a member of NATO for a very long time. And NATO members have an obligation that they all freely signed to pay 2% of their GDP on defense spending. And the Germans don't do that. They got very comfortable with the Americans giving them a security umbrella. And it was a policy of every single president, whether Democrat or Republican, that European members of NATO should pay their fair share. Except we never really made it an issue. We never pushed it. And so when President Trump came in and we ambassadors decided to make it an issue, we pressured these countries to actually do it, to pay. And that wasn't popular. There was a lot of pressure from the German government and the German public to shut up, to stop pushing us. Why do you keep asking? And yet we felt very strongly that it was the America First priority and criteria that if we were going to be good members of NATO, others should be too.
それがどうですか、今、バイデン政権になってから何かそのドイツに対する政策が変わったりとか、あるいはその今、バイデンの外交政策を見て何か問題だと思うところありますか？
So now it's under the Biden's administration. So did it change, or what do you think? What kind of issues do you see in the foreign policy of Biden?
It's a very good question. And what I would say is that while Donald Trump pushed America first, Joe Biden, he maximizes this word consensus. So many people think consensus is good, and it sounds good. It sounds like we could just all get along. But the reality of consensus is that the American position and the German position somehow meet in the middle. And let's just take that into the example of NATO spending. If the NATO spending is supposed to be 2%, and the Germans are at 1.2%, and they don't want to pay any more, so what do? We meet in the middle and they only pay 1.6? Well, that's not fair because the rule is 2%. Consensus would tell you, find a solution and just live with it. And America First policy is, you committed to 2%, you should do 2%. And so I think that the Joe Biden administration will maximize consensus. Now, I will say this, consensus in the UN Security Council is a disaster because you've got 15 countries who are now going to all have to agree. You will quickly come to the lowest common denominator of agreement. And when you're having that lowest common denominator of agreement, I would argue it's certainly not America First, and it's certainly not a very good, potent policy.